All right. So here, I think we can get started. It's 5:05. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another virtual event for New York City ACE. This is Kapil Samadia. I'm one of the co-lead for New York City ACE, and with me, other leaders are also there. There's Dilip and Drew and Madhu. This is our second event for 2021, and also the second event where we are hosting event with other cities ACE. Last time we hosted event with Toronto, and this time we are hosting this event with Philadelphia, our Philly ACE. And from there, we have a well-known face of Russell. You can wave. He's right there. So in this event, we're gonna have joint event as some community members from Philly as well. Uh, so what we are covering tonight. So if you feel that your enterprise process is a bit sluggy and challenging, and it needs some upgrade, well, you are at the right place. Because tonight we are going to have Michael Pryor and Jesse Perman to take us to a tour of Enterprise Trello and Jira Align to discover ways we can boost efficiency and the highest level of the organization. So that would be our main theme for tonight, and I'm pretty sure there would be a good takeaways from all those presentations. So with that, I'm just gonna go some code of conducts here. Please stay on mute unless it's needed to talk. If you have noise background or something, please stay on mute. If you have question during somebody's presentation, you can always put it on chat, and most probably we're gonna just open the line after the presentation, so you can directly ask the question by unmuting your mic. Tonight's event will be recorded. We usually do that for all our community members to post it there to refer later on. A quick agenda. Um, we just gonna right after this we're gonna jump to our first talk from on Trello Enterprise. Then we'll be having second talk on road mapping. Then there will be some raffles for which everybody can get raffles except the partners. Um, and after that, we might have some networking. It depends on how much time we have. One quick announcement: we have new face in the town. So Andrew Kendris is a new ACE leader for the New York City. Um, he can wave there, and in some of the event, we definitely gonna have some introductory part and have him speak to us. So he's joining us this year and assisting with all these events. Welcome, Andrew, one more time.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right. Next one is the sponsors. That's always very important for us because with their help, we are always able to host our events and also give some referral prizes to our community members. In terms of like Atlassian, they always sponsor our events, our logistic for the events. We have C Prime, which is who are giving us the grand prize of a bottle of bourbon. EdTech is giving us a $50 gift card. We have Hymetric, who's giving 2 gift cards of $25. By the way, if you are not aware, Column Technologies, they are now Hymetrics. So then we also have names here for the last events winners. So these were the people in our last ACE event in January. They were the winner for the raffles. Just for the to have like give everybody equal opportunity to win. What we are doing this time is like we are making changes to the list of participants, and like people who won in the last event, we are excluding them from the list of raffles at this time. Hope you understand that. Uh, Another thing is the Team 21. As you guys must be aware, Atlassian Summit is now Team 21, and this year this is being hosted on from April 28th to 30th. And the good part is like to give you glance and more information about Team 21. We have Russell, who's gonna cover a little bit more about Team 21 right after Michael's talk. So we're just gonna have a quick round of like introduction and more information on the Team 21. So next, I think we're gonna have our next segment for the presentations, and in that, the first presentation is on Trello for the enterprise, and for that we have Michael Pryor. As you know, he's CEO and head of product at Trello. We're fortunate to have Michael here. And one thing I could say to make jealous to other people is like he's local to New York, so he's a New Yorker here, right next to us. So we're fortunate to have Michael, who's gonna take us through the latest and exciting upgrades which happened with Trello and give us a good glance about it. So without further ado, I would like to pass this control to Michael, and then he's gonna take us through to the presentation.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, over to you, Michael.
Let me see if you guys can see.
Yeah,
You can see that a whole new trail. Okay, great.
yeah.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about a recent launch that we just did and some of the features that we added, and then talk about the future and where we're taking Trello. But first, I want to just go back in time for a minute and recap for anyone that hasn't seen Trello before. The 2-minute, or I don't know, 20-second intro is like Trello is made up of boards, which have lists, and inside the lists are cards. So in this screenshot here, you're looking at a board. The gray boxes are lists, the white boxes are cards. You can drag the cards around. If you click on a card and open it, you can add comments, labels, people, all kinds of things, attachments and things like that. But that's the 20-second version of Trello. And there's a lot more to it, obviously, but that's like the meat of what's happening. And I think for us this year was a big turning point because we've been around for 10 years. We started Trello about 10 years ago. We were acquired by Atlassian in 2017. But we have over that decade grown immensely. We have well over 50 million registered users. I'm sort of, I don't get to determine when I say those numbers. The company kind of says when I can update them to the latest numbers. So this number is really old. I'll just say that this 50 million is from like a year and a half ago. So well over that. We've 1 million active teams, 21 languages available all over the world. And this is sort of the vision that we had for Trello, was to build something where people can visually organize things and kind of use a model that people were familiar with, Post-it notes on a whiteboard, but in a digital format. And we did really well at that. Like, in fact, we did so well, probably every app that you use for collaboration has kind of like a Trello built in. There's like a boards view and things like that. Obviously, we didn't invent the Kanban board, but I think we brought it to the masses in a way that no other product has before. So we look back over these 10 years and we said, okay, well, what's next? We can't just like keep optimizing our sign up funnel or things like that. Like, well, let's do something fun. Let's like build some cool stuff. So when we were talking to some of our largest customers this past year, and this was always, I think, has been a thread, but there was this issue of information silos. Like, I think if you look at companies, especially larger companies, you see that they have just so many different apps that they're using to get stuff done. And I think this is pretty hard to fight, because I think like software has permeated every part of an organization. And so what's actually happening is specialists within the organization are starting to use tools, like your designers use Figma, your developers using Jira, and those tools get very specialized. And so there isn't like some tool that's going to be the tool that everyone can use to do all of their jobs. And so you end up in this case where work actually moves throughout an organization, moves through all these different specialized tools. But the problem for a lot of people is that they say that there's these information silos. It's hard to know what's going on. It feels like an overload. And what happened with the pandemic and everyone moving to distributed work was, they just adopted these digital tools immediately, and a lot of times without any practices that go along with this. So Trello, we've been working remotely and distributed for the past about 8 out of this 10 years. So most of our team is already remote. So this wasn't, switching to fully remote work for us was not really a big change, but I think for a lot of companies it was. And this, got even worse through the pandemic because people were using all these tools. So there were some studies. IDC did a study. Okta actually did this. They looked at the number of tools the average company was using. It was over 175 different tools. IDC looked at the time that people were spending and what they were doing at work. And a third of the time they were spent searching for things. And half the time they weren't finding it, because obviously this information is just spread throughout all these tools. And it's just like, that's part of our job now, is just kind of like navigating all these different tools. So we listened to those problems and we sort of said, okay, Trello is a great tool that many people use. They use it for simple project management. They use it for visual organization. People like it. It's a tool that like people like to use. And so we're like, how do we take the things that make us valuable to our users and apply it to these problems, which is, I think, in some ways difficult, because one of the things we don't want to do to Trello is actually just add a ton of features to it and make it more complicated. We're not trying to turn it into a hardcore project management solution, right? Like that's not really where Trello shines. It's not why people use it. They do use it for managing projects. They use it for project management. That is kind of like the core of what people are doing, but it is something beyond that. And I think the fact that people use it for their kitchen renovations and their home stuff, that's nice that people do that they use it for all those things. But I think that's symbolic of the fact that it's valuable to people and they see that they can use it in their own personal lives. And I think the value is the principles that go into what we're doing. And some of those principles are like easy to get started, familiar, succinct, universal, and they're like adjectives that we've they mean a lot to us internally. I can give you a lot of examples, but I have to come back to a different meeting to go through examples of all those different things and what the product principles are. But we took what we had in Trello and we sort of applied it to this problem. And we said, okay, how can we approach it? How can we give people more visibility into what's going on, reduce the information silos, not like because we put all the information in one spot, but sort of give people more visibility to what's happening. And the first thing we did was we added a different way to look at your cards. So previously you looked at your cards in the Kanban view where you had the lists, and we added a whole bunch of different new ways to do that. Some of them had been power-ups before. We solidified. So now we have a timeline view, or we have a table view. We have a timeline view for managing workload. There's a dashboard view for doing reports on your cards. There's a calendar view, and there's a map view too. So if you have geographical data in your cards, you can look at them in the map. Now all these different views are kind of like pivots to the board. So you have all your cards on the board. Certain jobs might require some of these views, some of them don't. The table view itself that we add is the first view that actually will bring cards from multiple boards together into one view. So eventually all the views will be able to do that. So you'll both be able to take a single board and kind of go through all these different views. So you can go to calendar view, you can go to the reports view, you can go to the timeline view, and then eventually those views, you'll be able to do them across multiple projects and bring in a portfolio level as well. But right now what we shipped is mostly just single board views, and then the table view that's a multi-board view. And this is great. This is awesome. This is super cool. But the thing I want to spend more time talking about is actually, we didn't just extend the metaphor of like what a board was in Trello. We also extended the metaphor of what a card is in Trello. So cards used to be, essentially you could think of it like a text box in Trello that you type some information in, right? Like, and you hit enter and the information was inside Trello. We realized that all that work that was happening throughout the organization, they existed in other tools. And so what we did was we extended the idea of what a card could represent from just representing stuff inside Trello on a single board that you typed in to representing stuff on other boards, and also even other tools. And so we have this link card concept. And so you can point the card at another card on a different board and you get a mirror card. You could point the card at another board. It could be a whole board you point it at to. You could point it at a YouTube movie. You could point it at a Spotify playlist. You could point it at a Jira ticket. So let me show you an example. What you do is you go into Trello to make a card, you paste a Google Doc link, for example, and boom, now you have a card. It's actually a Google Doc. You can hit preview and you can edit it right there inside Trello. So essentially that's editing, but you can actually open that card and I don't think it works this way right now, but it will. You open that card and there's the card back. So you can have a conversation on it just like you would with a normal card in Trello. You can add labels to it. You can assign people to it. Okay, so that's cool. Let's look at it. What about with Jira? So you have, let's say you have a Jira ticket, you take that ticket and you're doing some work where the marketing team's doing a new product launch and they bring in a Jira ticket in there, boom, it turns into a Jira issue. Now, the cool thing about this is going to update in real time. If you go back to Jira and you change the status, for example, from waiting to in progress, when you go back to Trello, it obviously is going to say in progress there. If you don't have permission to see this, you won't see this, right? Like it sort of respects the permissions that are evident in Jira. Right now, you can't open that and edit the Jira issue right there. You would have to like click it and you would follow the link to Jira. But we want to do what you just saw with the Google Doc thing. We want to do that for Confluence. We want to do that for Jira. So we have to add those sorts of things. And there's actually like a whole bunch of different apps you can do this with. This is just a subset of them. This is what we shipped with, these 30, and I think they added another 80 since then. They added like Zillow, so you can take a Zillow link and put it in there and you get a nice image of the house that you might have been looking at. But there's Asana, you can take an Asana issue, put it into Trello, Bitbucket, Figma, Dropbox, all these things, YouTube, and you can watch the movie. Loom is another one. The Loom cards are great. We use them all the time. So that's kind of interesting. It's sort of like a fancy unfurl, which I think like opens up a lot of doors that you can do inside Trello, where you can take that visual organization that you're doing in Trello, and now you can apply it to work that might exist in other places. But if you take that idea of stretching what a card represents and even go further, and this is something that we're working on internally, we haven't shipped it yet. It's probably coming out pretty soon though, for us to play with. But this is a very early ideas type of thing that we want to work with people and sort of understand what they were doing. I'm going to switch to a live demo here so I can show you guys. So that's a one-to-one relationship, right? Like the card in Trello represents one Jira ticket, or it represents one Asana issue, or it represents one YouTube movie. But we're experimenting with actually letting the card represent a collection of work. So if you look in this first list over here, these are dash cards, we're calling them. They're like little mini dashboards, right? So this card at the top, overdue cards on this board, which says 10, is actually watching the cards on this board. It's just set to do that. It doesn't have to. It could watch cards on other boards, cards all over Trello. And if I add another card, let's call this overdue. And set the due date to yesterday and save that. What you'll see is that this number 10 will turn into 11. It might take a while because, oh, there you go. Okay, so now you can make these dash cards a lot of different things. Like they could be, number of cards that started this month, number of cards that were created today on this board. There's a lot of different metrics that you can define. And the interesting thing about this is it doesn't just have to be Trello. You could point this at Jira issues, for example. And the interesting thing about that is you can now actually talk about a collection of work, because this card in Trello represents the 10 overdue cards. If you open the card, you can actually see the 10 on the back here. I can even, and I can see who they're assigned to and the due date. I can even explore it and dive in and do all kinds of crazy things like export it and pivot on different columns or change what I'm tracking. And it's super advanced. And if you imagine essentially what the card is it's a mini dashboard that actually has metrics associated with it. It's watching work, and you can have automation attached to it. So this could be like, when this number hits 15, like notify me or say something in the Slack channel that our backlog is over, too full or something like that. The interesting thing about that is you can actually set up things in Trello really easily that's watching work for you. So not only can you talk about an aggregate of work or a collection of work inside Trello, which you can't do, and like Jira doesn't have a way to talk about 10 tickets at once. You can make a comment on each ticket, but there's no way to talk about a group of tickets. Maybe you're doing a retrospective and you're looking at, in JSM, like people emailing in about their problems or something, and you want to talk about a bunch of different tickets at once. But also you could have tickets here or cards here that are watching work in other systems or other boards, or even on this particular board, and then set up automation associated with that so it notifies you. So that's kind of like one of the ideas where we're starting to stress that idea of like what a card represents, and letting it do a lot more inside Trello. Let me see, you guys were chatting here. Let me see. But let me go back to my keynote and let's see. Okay, so the other thing I'll highlight, so that those features were meant to help bigger companies with that information sprawl and sort of like help them with the story of like how Trello fits within an organization, how it plays well with Jira. We also have our automation. You can tie things in our automation system into Jira and vice versa. The one thing that we heard many times was, at least for large organizations, there was this challenge with getting people that weren't on the technical side of the company to adopt Jira. And so in my own personal opinion, like I think Trello is a great tool for an organization. And I think like it could fit the bill for a lot of people. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows, like we have all the certifications and all the enterprise security that you'd expect. And we roll up into Atlassian Access as well for SSO and things like that. And we're working really closely with the cloud enterprise team for our future roadmap as well. So it sort of checks all the boxes on the enterprise side. But a lot of what I showed you is the end user functionality for like why somebody within a larger company would want to use Trello. So I'm going to stop there and sort of field any questions if anyone has about, I mean, anything. The floor is open. Just I'd be happy to answer anything about Trello. No, nothing's off limits. I guess it's recorded, so I'll have to be careful what I say. But
That's true. Thanks, Michael, for taking us through all this. So yeah, folks, you can unmute and directly ask questions, whatever you have.
Hey, Michael. Russell Zero from the NYC-ACE. You said nothing's off the table. I'm going to ask the fighting words questions here. I know my company is trying to figure out the balance between different tools, and we of course have that Microsoft Office 365 stack and the Microsoft Planner that tries its best to do a poor job of replicating the success of Trello.
yeah,
how are you approaching combating those different types of enterprise environments where that's being basically offered for free inside that stack, but it just can't hold a match, and for people who are trying to advocate for Trello in that type of an environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think like ultimately you come down to this question of like, what are the needs of the person and why they're using the tool? And if it turns out that they're just using it for very simple things, like it's really hard to make a case that you can, that as a tool that's outside the Microsoft stack, if you're like, oh, we already paid for this stuff and I just need like cards and a list and a board and that's it, and I'm like, it's almost like how Apple has that Notes app on the iPhone and stuff, and you're like, if all you need to do is write down 6 things for your grocery list, like great, go ahead. Like I can't, you're not going to fight that. It's like it's there in the OS. So that's not, and so I think like that can be a challenge because it sort of depends. And so I think some of the things I showed were the things that obviously Planner can't do. I could talk about the automation, I could talk about the power-ups, I could talk about all these features. And what you're really trying to do is connect with something that somebody is like, oh, that really helps me do my job better, or that helps me, that'll really help me with the problems I'm facing. And I think that's why I sort of set up this deck with that premise, because I think that's something that we're all facing today, is like this tool overload and how it's connected to these other things. And I know, obviously we play really well with Teams, Microsoft Teams. When they made Teams, they were like, oh, we got to get Trello integration. There was a lot of warring. I remember the PM for Teams calling me and being like, oh my God, they keep wanting me to put Planner in there. And I'm like, why am I even doing that? And like I just want to do the Teams thing, or the Trello thing. And so we have a really good relationship with Microsoft and all these tools. But I think if you try to take somebody within your organization and they're like using the very simplest pieces of what Planner does, then I don't know, maybe it is fine that they use Planner instead of Trello. I don't think that it's going to scale up for those needs that are, outside of the bounds of what the Apple Notes app does, right? Like their job, I think from a strategy perspective, Microsoft was just trying to make sure that they had an answer to all the IT admins that were complaining that all their people were using Trello, right? Like, it's like, they're like, can you just give me something so I can tell the people to use that instead of Trello, so we don't have to pay for Trello or whatever. And, you know, then they would. And I mean, because Trello's free, people would still keep using it anyway. I mean, it's like, I get, there's probably lots of people at Microsoft that are using Trello instead of Planner right now. But
Thank you.
sure.
Cool. More questions, folks?
All right, I would like to go on next. Thanks, Michael. Thanks. I'm one of the co-leaders, and I think last time we had you was probably 3 years back at the Squarespace. So thanks for coming back.
Yeah, I remember
The
that.
New York community. Yeah, that's great. And again, as being a New Yorker, we have the privilege to have you closer and get you more often. So thanks for that. So the question that I have here is, the word on the street is artificial intelligence and machine learning. So as part of the Trello, what is the new thing that's coming in terms of automating, making things smarter? Like, that's the next thing what people are constantly asking for. Is there something that's on the horizon, something that you guys are already there?
Yeah, I mean, that it's there's some stuff that happened. I wouldn't call it machine learning at this point in Trello, but there's obviously some stuff for making work better. Like, our automation engine will watch what you're doing on your board, and if you open it up and it sees you doing a lot of stuff, it'll start with this suggestion. I gotta be like, I can make a rule for you so that you can, like, this just happened. Like, I noticed every Monday morning you do the same thing. So if you open up Butler, it's our automation engine is called Butler because it serves you and does things for you. And it would just tell you, like, I can just make a rule that does that for you, where you like archive all the cards in the last list and, you know, create new ones in the first list. It'll just like create a rule for you. So there's things like that. There's suggestions that happen inside Trello. They don't really rise to the level of like machine learning type things. I don't know if one of the things I think that is interesting, and so I think this, the GPT-3 stuff that came out, where this sort of I think that there's probably a wave coming, not specifically to Trello, but just general software, where people see a lot of really cool ways to take those APIs and incorporate them into their tools. Because prior to this, I think that a lot of the AI was very domain specific or something. Like, it wasn't as easily accessible to people. And I think when people are seeing what GPT-3 can do, there's a lot more opportunity there. But that's sort of forward looking, I think, right now at the moment. I think for the things that people are doing in Trello, it's not that kind of unstructured organization that's happening is hard to feed into a system because it's unstructured and it doesn't necessarily, I mean, that's the intent, right? Like, Trello is supposed to be super flexible. The day, you know, like, your labels on one board don't have to match the labels on the other board. Like, they're just like, you can change the name of a list at any time, and it doesn't, like, it's just sort of like, that's the ethos of Trello. That's why it does that. And so that sort of type of application, because the schema isn't so well defined and the data types and everything that's in it aren't defined, I think it's harder to lend itself to like that world of like, hey, I watch the data and I understand the shape and the language that you're using, and I can start to do things that are really interesting. But, you know, I think that there's a lot of cool things there. Unrelated, but kind of related, I think there's a lot of, you know, the two other areas that I see, actually, the first one is probably more relevant to Trello, but the asynchronous communication of like things like Loom, you know, like asynchronous video, asynchronous audio. I think like with distributed working, like those, I think Slack just, Noah Weiss, the VP of product at Slack, I just saw his Twitter thread before coming onto this, and he just went through all these things that Slack's going to add. They're going to add like Loom, Zoom, and Clubhouse into Slack, basically. I mean, that's my like quick summary. That's not actually what's happening, but that generally that's what would happen. I think that's going to be really interesting for a lot of different apps, like how video and asynchronous video, and being able to just record like a little screen share or a little video and then sending that to people. I think that is following a trend where you see a lot of consumer type technology make its way to business. That's, remember when we were all in AIM years ago and AOL Instant Messenger, and it was like, then, the next decade it was Slack. It's like, now it's like TikTok and Snapchat and all the video stuff on Instagram and those sorts of things. And I think like that method of communication becomes like familiar to people, and then it makes its way into business software. So I think we might do less Zooms and more Looms, whatever it's called, and it might just make its way into all the software. And then the other thing, I know you didn't ask me about like all this stuff, but it's super interesting to me. The other thing, I've been spending a ton of time on my Oculus with my team. Not necessarily working per se, but like spending time together because we can't actually get together in person. So I think like we've been playing poker or doing mini golf and things like that. But actually, if you go into like apps like Spatial, which is a virtual meeting room in Facebook's VR thing, it's really cool because you can bring up a whiteboard, you can share your computer screen, you can bring up a Trello board, you can like do all these things. It's a little bit harder than if you're just like on a Zoom sharing your screen right now. So when that gets easier and easier, I think like the added value of being able to like feel like you're in the room with somebody is intense. Like I think even just this Zoom that we're having now, like seeing all the little squares instead of actually feeling like your presence and talking to a room full of 20 people, the VR makes it totally a richer experience. So I think there's a lot that's going to happen there. It's probably just early days at this point. I think it's probably just a lot of gaming will happen for a while, and then people will start to understand the sort of business side of it. But anyway, sorry, it's just like,
Yeah, I know that the topic is you can go on, and clearly shows that you guys are already in that direction. So that's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Gene just was asking about like Notion and Airtable, and their sort of common views. I mean, like I mentioned this at the beginning. I think I talk about specifically about Notion in a second. I think that there's a lot of apps that have like the Kanban view, and I think Miro has it. Like these apps that aren't even directly competitive to Trello. Like I think the wave was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. GitHub added it. They added that, and there were some apps that actually added Trello-like experience to GitHub's issues, and then they added it internally, and it was like waffle.io and ZenKit maybe, or Zen something. I don't know what happened to those apps, but I think like part of what we're doing is evolving that idea of what Trello is, and that's part of the future vision of connecting that work. So I think like we're trying to move our app forward as well, and lean on that metaphor that lets people get in and understand what it is, but really extend it so it can do so many other things. So I hope that doesn't, even as that gets commoditized away and many other apps do it. And I think the thing about Notion, which is interesting, is, and I think Asana's in this case and Monday too, is there's a lot of apps that are like, they because they're single app products and they're trying to go wall to wall within an organization. There's two things happening. Like Notion actually has a really good single player mode. Like you can get in there and play by yourself. So that's really valuable. It's like one of the things that's great about Trello too, right? Like a lot of people just use it and they use it for themselves. But it's also, I think their strategy is essentially to do all that within one app. And I know that techies love that. There's been a lot of adoption there. I think we'll see whether that extends to a more mass audience, or whether you can do that all within one app. The Atlassian strategy has been to build apps that focus on their specific thing and do it well, and then use the platform to tie those things together. So the way, not only just tying our own apps together, but tying our apps to other apps as well. The interesting thing about the card linking thing that I showed you, where you put the link in there and you hit enter and that card turns into that other thing, that's actually being supplied by an Atlassian platform feature. So that functionality actually works in Confluence, it works in Jira, it works in all the other tools. It's not necessarily, it doesn't look exactly the same, but that functionality is all there. No matter if you put that Google Doc link in a Confluence page or a Jira ticket, you should actually be able to preview the doc and edit it there as well. So there's a lot of stuff that we're doing where we're expressing it through our applications, but being provided by the platform And so the idea is that we can do the apps can keep doing the things they do, but we don't have to duplicate that work to provide those cool experiences within the other apps as well. So when you start thinking about like those other things like video, asynchronous video and those sorts of things, like how do we do that at the platform level so we can kind of like stay true to what our apps do instead of trying to put the kitchen sink and everything into one app, which can be a little bit overwhelming over time as you start to get more bigger companies and their needs, and you're starting adding features and features and features, and you sort of lose the beginnings of why people used your app in the first place. And that single player mode then becomes like very difficult. So is that platform piece Forge driven? It's not. We're actually doing some spikes and working on Forge and stuff. I think like the long term, what would be really cool long term is if our power up system, you could build power ups using Forge, and so that then they would work in Trello and in Jira and all those other things. I think we have a decent amount of work to do that. But there is a way to build, like if you had your own website, like a URL that was like your application, and our it's called Smart Link. Our Smart Link provider didn't unfurl for your website. You could build that experience in Forge and put it, like publish it to Atlassian, so that then Trello, when you type the URL to your application, for example, in Trello, the card would become that. So you could write that functionality in Forge and it would be expressed through Trello. I don't think that's open at the moment, but I think I remember that when we were discussing this, that would be feasible to do. And so it's kind of Forge driven in that sense.
Wow, that's great. I have an interesting question for you, Michael. So what do you use at Trello to manage Trello? Is it Trello or Jira?
We use both. I think very early on, we used a lot of Trello. In fact, the whole dev team used Trello. When we were smaller, that worked really well. Then when we joined Atlassian, there was no like, oh, you have to use Jira. Like that, it was like whatever. But we did end up, when as our team grew, we added people from other parts of Atlassian. We actually at one point we added a bunch of people. It's called the Trellocation. It was like relocation, but to Trello, so it was Trellocation. Anyway, a bunch of people came over, and one of the things they realized was that, like, I mean, for a big dev team, specifically for a software methodology, like Trello is not a specialist tool. It certainly can do that. Tons of software people use Trello, they use it effectively. It's not built specifically to be a tool for software developers. So while it might work for that, it's not built for that. And I think like as your needs for an organization get more structured, it can like start to be like, there's a lot of work to keep this working. Whereas like we could just adopt a tool that's already built for this way of working, and it will work fine. So some of the teams have shifted over to Jira, and some parts of the organization still use Trello. Like we use Trello for like our one-on-ones, for like our leadership board. Like this isn't my own specific view of how I use Trello, but it's like for our leadership team, for strategy, for driving meeting agendas, for like town halls, the agenda for town halls. The PMs use them a lot of times for like researching phases of product pieces and like putting that together. You know, people are using them now more because we've added those new views, like the timeline view for road mapping and doing that kind of work. And I think what we did with the views was we kind of extended that functionality of what Trello could do within that project management space. And so like we actually added a little bit more surface area to how deep you could get with Trello. So some things that probably were more difficult with Trello are now easier for managing workloads and seeing roadmaps and things like that. So it's a mix.
Cool, makes sense. Any other questions, folks?
I've got one, and it's okay if you're not comfortable answering. It's okay. Everything that's happened in the last year, we've all in our companies and in our both personal and professional lives have had a tough time adjusting. What's the biggest challenge that you've had either personally or with Trello and everything there that the biggest challenge and that you're really happy to overcome and that you want to celebrate?
Yeah, for us as a team, not as a product, but just as human beings working together, the hardest thing for us is because we were distributed mostly before, the one thing that kept us together was every year we would have a thing called Trello together, and we would all go to a resort for a week, and it wasn't really work. We had a couple like town hall type meetings, but most of the time it was just to hang out, right? Because if we weren't in the same building, we didn't really know our coworkers in that like deeper sense, and that was meant to be something that helped us get together. And we had to cancel it last year, and we had to cancel it again this year because of the timing. So we ended up losing 2 of them. We're going to try something unique this year. So we'll see if that works. It's not necessarily, we're going to try to do it virtual, but talking about Team 21 coming up with Summit, right? Like last year we did it remote, and then I think we were like internally, we're like, should we cancel? And then we did remote, and then this year we're doing it remote. I think that there's obviously something awesome about getting together as humans in person and connecting in that way. I don't think we have to do it all the time. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to work in an office 9 to 5 every day. It depends, it depends on the stage of what you're doing. It might actually be true for tiny startups that it's better for them all to be in the same place for that period, that quick evolution period of product. But I don't know. But I do miss that. The biggest challenge is not being able to really connect with the people that we're working with. So I think a lot of states are just opening up vaccines right now in the US and stuff. So hopefully, knock on wood, where's my wood? Here it is, that we're turning a corner here in the US at least, and we'll be able to get back together sometime in the summer or the fall. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to. I think from the product perspective, it was probably what I demoed in my deck was just like people are feeling they've all adopting these tools and people are just totally overwhelmed. And it's like, how do we do that? And I think like we've been really excited by the reaction to the features that we launched, which, is almost like they're not all done and baked. Like there's a lot more that we have to do to these things, but like people are ecstatic, and like the reception that we got from the press and just like Twitter and everything is really exciting. So I think like there's a lot of potential in that direction and a lot of excitement about the next couple of years for Trello. So
That's great. I think we'll wrap it up here. And
cool.
Yeah, once again, thank you, Michael, for finding time and coming up here and presenting to us. It's really beneficial for everyone. And I hope we see you again in another NYC-ACE. Being local to New York, that's the benefit we can always take. All right, thank you. So we're gonna move to the next segment, and before going for our second presentation, we're gonna have a quick information on Team 21, as I mentioned earlier, and Russell is gonna take us through that and give some more information. So Russell, over to you.
I can't tell you how many hours of meetings a day I spend talking to my mute button. Although I'm sure my coworkers don't mind that. So I wanted to just give just a real brief overview of Team 21. If you haven't looked at it yet, please do. I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about this, and it's really kind of possibly the most excited I've been for an event in quite a while. It's coming up. It's right around the corner, April 28th to 30th. And here are kind of the overall themes for the big picture on days 1 and 2. In addition to what's shown here, day 1 is going to close out the open sessions with a keynote about advanced mindsets from Jill Ellis, Katie Sowers, and Atlassian's Molly Hellerman. And day 2 you're also going to be hearing from Atlassian Team Award-winning customers, as well as Atlassian leaders, including Amita Abraham, the Atlassian head of product marketing IT teams on DevOps, Agile, IT, and the future of enterprise teams. And Malcolm Gladwell is going to bring it home, really speaking about the kind of leadership that's needed for today's world. That really spoke to me. I'm also really excited because it doesn't require travel. I can't tell you the number of years I wanted to go to a summit, and at the last minute, we'd go into some sort of a travel moratorium at whatever company I was at, and it would always just kind of pull that carpet right out from under me. The ability to go to this and make it work in your own time zone as well, as you see here. If you want more details about those rebroadcasts, you can go onto the website for more details. It's about as accessible as it's ever been. On both days 1 and 2, you can also choose your own adventure from a catalog of 75 plus demos, breakouts, and exclusive live sessions on each day, spanning all of these great tracks. Once again, the website will give you more. You don't have to try to digest each of those, but those are the quick summaries. And as I mentioned, it's all about experiencing it. There's the option for free, but there's also codes for community members to be able to get that next tier. As mentioned, it was in the chat earlier. If you scroll up through the chat, I think either Dilip or Kapil or somebody had posted.
Mentioned. Yeah.
For those in Philadelphia, we do have a Slack channel specifically for Philly ACE in our Philly ACE Slack area for the members to converse, socialize, and share your experiences live throughout the event. If there's multiple topics you're interested in that happen to be at the same time, find out who else from Philly is attending, and you can divide and conquer and share your notes with each other, so you can kind of be in multiple places at once. For everybody though, if you see me on any of the sessions, reach out, say hi. I'm hoping to see as many of you virtually there at Team 21. I'm so excited. And for those that remember and that I got a chance to meet at Summit in Vegas a few years ago, and when I was Bob Russ, I will promise that somewhere in there, I will come to one of the sessions in costume. I don't know what costume yet, but I will do that. Thanks so much for the time to speak to you guys and give you an overview of Team 21. Hopefully you found it interesting. The website is right there on the screen, and have a great rest of your evening.
Awesome.
Back over to you.
Yep. Thank you, Russell, for that. So yes, folks, that's the Team 21 is right there. You can always register and take benefit of like everything being virtual. You don't have to travel anywhere, as Russell said. All right, so we'll move to our next segment. So for our second talk, and for our second talk, our presenter is Jesse Perlman. In case you're not aware, Jesse was a solution architect with AgileCraft before it got acquired by Atlassian. Jesse is now a business agile consultant with C Prime, and he's going to cover today about Jira Align capability for the roadmap plans. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Jesse, and we are excited to hear him.
Appreciate it.
Over
Thank
to
you,
Jesse.
All right, let me go ahead and get my screen shared here. I got to tell you, tough act to follow, Michael. Appreciate all the wonderful insight that you've given everybody on the call today. That was just really fantastic. So thank you. So we're going to take a look we've gone from Trello. Now we're going to start taking a look at Atlassian's Jira Align, which is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Trello is a very fluid, dynamic app. It allows you to collect information holistically. It allows you to organize it the way that works best for you at that level. When we start talking about an enterprise that's looking to scale its agility and gain clear visibility to its strategic outcomes over 1 to 3 years, then we start leaning towards a solution like Atlassian's Jira Align. So let me get off the C Prime screen. And what we're talking about today is road mapping and how we go from a rough roadmap to a refined roadmap inside of Jira Align. And we'll talk about the concept of a roadmap and a strategic roadmap and a near-term roadmap as we get into it. Now, you heard that I was a solution architect at AgileCraft. I was a customer success manager there as well. I was in the acquisition, rolled into Atlassian, and then came over to C Prime. I'm now actually the practice lead behind the Jira Align practice that we've evolved at C Prime. So not only am I a business agility consultant, I'm very familiar with the platform I'm about to share with you. C Prime, a little bit about us before I get it too much into Jira Align. What do we do? Basically, what we do is a lot. We work at the agile level, organizing teams to help enable flow. We don't necessarily jump straight into a tool solution. We want to understand, are you working on the right things? Do you have a clear concept of what your product is? Are your teams aligned that? And what are your processes and framework? Then we talk about the technologies that best serve you where you're at and help grow your stack based on where you want to go from a technology, process, and people perspective. So my real focus isn't just through the lens of Jira Align. It's about helping scale organizations through the right tool solution as it aligns, again, to what they're trying to accomplish and the way they're trying to accomplish it. Jira Align is one lens of focus that we use when we're talking about the highest level of organizations trying to really scale predictability all the way up to the strategic level. So inside of Jira Align, what we support is the enterprise level. We talk about, the executive really, and the strategic initiatives, investment prioritizations, and execution status that they're after. And we support that with the software using mission, vision, and values, fiduciary roll-up, and execution transparency. The roadmap is kind of the thread that ties all of this together, and you'll see this as we get into it deeper. Portfolio, we focus at the portfolio owners, enterprise architect, epic owners, looking at strategy and investment funding, allocating those strategies across the portfolios, demand management. Do they have the right, the right people, the right organizations to bring to bear? Budgeting, optional. How much money are we spending? Roughly right money, basically. Strategic themes, epic business cases and Kanban, epic backlog. This is where we're really going to start leaning in at this point in our journey when we get into this, to the presentation a little bit deeper. This is just to set the context a little more. Solution portfolio manager, enterprise architect, solution engineer, prioritize enablers, capabilities, synchronize value streams, deliver solution demos. So we're starting to see how the focus really is about scaling agile and aligning value outcomes. And there's a capability backlog that supports that. At the program, the sweet spot where we're doing predictable delivery from the teams across that quarter boundary, or what we call a planning or a program increment. From a SAFe perspective, we hear terms like release train engineer, system engineer, product manager, and a lot of these are very SAFe specific terms, but they're also generic to the industry. When we think about this, what we're really thinking about is at any level, we have a planner, a coordinator, and an implementer. And there's always these three that we want to have in a conversation to ensure that we're delivering the right thing at the right time. And Jira Align supports not just a SAFe perspective if you're scaling your agile from a methodology perspective, but a variety of any methods, DA, LESS, Scrum at Scale, or even a custom. So we can see now all the way down to the team level. And when we talk about the team level, Jira Align plugs into Jira and other team tools, but Jira is the primary focus here from an Atlassian perspective to say we leave them happy, healthy, and whole over there. And now what we're doing is we're collecting the data from the predictable team base and aligning it to that kind of program delivery against the quarter. So inside of Jira and Jira Align, the way it kind of works is the product managers, the coordinators, the people who are trying to deliver the strategic value at that kind of train or delivery group level, they're going to go ahead and do the planning inside of Jira Align at the feature level. They're seeing the portfolio epics and the strategic themes, and they understand how to deliver that value. The product owner may be inside Jira Align or maybe inside Jira creating the stories that are necessary with the team. But what we see is we see the ePMO, that enterprise PMO delivering to the portfolios and then down to the delivery trains. And we get that project planning and forecasting, dependency and release management out of Jira Align. The data synchronizes, the features go over as Jira epics, and the teams see the Jira epics and do the further decomposition and sprint planning that tie back up into Jira Align. When we talk about the integration from a best practices perspective, how that might look, I'm not going to spend too much time here, but in Jira, you have a program project, and we talk about from a best practice perspective, though it's not necessary, one team has one board, and that's aligned to give it kind of that train or delivery group perspective. There's a program project where the epic features live, or the epic lives, and then the team project where they have the stories, subtasks, and bugs, and then they have their sprint boards. All of that integrates over into Jira Align, where we have the feature, the companion object equal to the epic inside of Jira, And then we see a planning increment by which we're organizing the sprints to deliver against. That planning increment is kind of the quarter boundary, and the stories that are being created by the teams before they're even aggregated into the backlog for a sprint. So we see all of it feeds each other elegantly within the system. Now, I could have spent an hour alone on all that stuff that I just covered briefly, just to set the stage for what we're going to be talking about inside of Jira Align a little bit more in detail. When we talk about setting a strategic roadmap, it's actually there to help the portfolios build their roadmap of delivery, and it helps then refine the delivery groups or those trains and what they're going to be delivering against the quarter boundary or the planning increment. So when we set the strategic roadmap, first of all, it's also known as a solution roadmap in SAFe, and it's intended to extend 1 to 3 years. It's really about projecting the strategies out over a horizon that you're trying to gain predictability against, so that you know that you're either following the market closely or leading the market. When we look at this, the highest concept of strategic work inside of Jira Align is the theme. That's what you're looking at on the right-hand side of the screen. And the theme is a large body of work that spans 1 to 3 years. It's cross-cutting, which means it brings in multiple portfolios to do the delivery of. It funds the portfolios. This is where, in theory, the enterprise is putting a bucket of money in the strategic theme and saying, portfolios, you know what you need to do. Take your money and do what is appropriate. And then it ties back into a strategic goal to say, this strategic theme is going to help deliver the next generation product that we're putting on the market. The roadmap elegantly allows unplanned work, basically a calendar ask, as we see in the lower right here. We think it should start here. We think it should end there. Roughly, that's what we're asking for. And then we can decompose it into planned time, those planning increments. We know that we have these quarters we're going to be pursuing against. Now we can see from this time, the aggregation or the decomposition, I should say, of the planning increments or those quarter boundaries. So now we see that we're starting to bring either unplanned, don't quite know exactly when we're going to deliver it, to an exact kind of understanding of when we'll deliver it. The strategic roadmap inside of Jira Align allows a very robust view into the lifespan of the strategic themes and their supporting portfolio epics. And progress is displayed on the roadmap. It's also a place in which health can be displayed. It's subjective, right? Like, I know that we're having some contractors roll off. We might have a dip in productivity. And then we can also set target start and stop dates and have it displayed. And then the time horizon is customizable. We'll see all this in just a second and on the next slide. The roadmap also allows the portfolios to understand where they can apply those epic levels of value that support the continuing delivery of the strategic theme. And there's a view that they can follow month by quarter to say, well, over what span of time on the calendar are they looking at, because it's all aspirational at this point. And then we can see those portfolio epics as they are progressing against their strategic themes. So this is literally the strategic roadmap view that you get out of Jira Align. And when we're talking about that strategic roadmap, 1 to 3 years, here's the yearly horizon. So how are we doing in this year alone? And epics by strategic theme. So now I'm starting to see I have my strategic theme as the highest work object and its portfolio epic, which is the decomposed portfolio consumption of it. I can see month by quarter. So I'm looking at this from the calendar perspective, and I can see where my program or my planning increments, those quarter boundaries, line up as well. Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 over the calendar. So now I'm starting to get a sense of where things are lining up as it moves more towards a agreed upon delivery. I can see the strategic theme itself. I can see the portfolio epic. Whoops. And the colors that we see are the health that are being reflected around where that's at. The dotted line down the center is today's date. So this becomes not just a place from which we're radiating data, but it's a place from which we're actually reporting against the strategic outcomes. This becomes a steering space. As we move forward, now that we understand the strategic roadmap and how Jira Align elegantly, displays those key strategies that the enterprise may be pursuing, it has the yearly horizon, the month by quarter view, portfolio epics by the strategic theme. And we remember that the strategic theme is the highest level of strategic work inside of Jira Align. When we set the strategic roadmap, what we've done is we said, here's the money that we're going to spend for this period of time as an enterprise. Now go forth, portfolios, decompose, and show me what you need to do to complete this. We will work with you to bring that understanding into play. So now we start to build the portfolio roadmap. Now there's a series of meetings that take place, but when we talk about using visual aids, the roadmap becomes one of those in which it helps drive that understanding that this is the strategy, this is the period of time that we need to focus on for the budget that we need to spend, and what do we need to do to bring this into an existence. So it starts with reviewing the strategic roadmap during certain events, planning, doing the annual planning. Where are we at with the strategies we started last year and the ones that are going to progress through this year? And which strategies can we start this year that we know we can start to progress work against? So from there, we have steerings, the work that has been planned and is going. How often are we checking in to make sure that roughly right, we're directionally accurate, or we're pivoting off? Because the value feedback that we're getting from the objectives and key results inside the system is telling us our leading indicators are not showing the value delivered. Creating the necessary portfolio epics then from these events can be done either from the ideation module, which is not a place that a lot of clients use currently. The ideation module is a very rich space to just collect from outside or inside the organization any idea. Most organizations use an intake process, and the portfolio intake tab on the portfolio epic inside of Jira Align supports that. We'll see how this works. So this is guiding the portfolio epic through the life cycle for consumption by the programs and trains. We see there's a strategic theme. We bring forth a proposed concept, a portfolio epic. Now it has to move through its life cycle to see if it fits the value before the trains can get to it. So when we talk about capturing that portfolio epic, we talk about the ideation module, which not a lot of people are using, but there is the intake, which is very straightforward. On the right-hand side of the screen, what you're looking at is on the back side of this, in the background is the backlog of Jira Align. And in Jira Align, you can quickly just create a new portfolio epic with a minimum amount of information and get it into the backlog in the unassigned backlog to have it brought through its life cycle. And on the record, there's an intake form. And it's just the basics of what does it take to know that this has some minimal sense of approval so that we can review this. We can spend the time looking at it. We can spend that money in this effort to ensure that this has value back to the organization. And we can see there's a default form in there that talks about justification. Why this department? Where is it coming from? Who's got the request? So we can go talk to them for more details. Who reviewed this and said it was okay for this to move forward? More than one person's got to have this, think this idea is okay. And then in the end, who's the final approver to say this is good to go? So that when this does make it through its life cycle, we know we come back to Hashim to say, hey, you're in essence part of the funding group. Is this okay? So the intake tab is configurable. Minimal detail or data required to be reviewed, and any organization can change it to what's their own intake process. When we see again the backlog, we can create that new portfolio. There's that default form for intake. But once it's created, now it's going from intake into its life cycle. And so inside of Jira Align, we want to identify those steps and criteria that the epic needs to pass through to meet its funding and alignment to the programs and trains for appropriate work decomposition. So the process flows inside of Jira Align, and what we're looking at on the right-hand side is again the picture of the backlog and what's called the Kanban process flow view. This is a safe kind of configured view right now, but it's configurable to any steps, whatever your life cycle for your work might be. And you can create notifications to say as work is brought into each one of these steps, those people who are working in that step, doing the reviewing, the analyzing, et cetera, they get an email notification so they can schedule time to go take a look at that thing and start to do the process. It drives data integrity because you can create rich exit criteria to say before it can leave this column of reviewing, it has to have X, Y, Z, and 1, 2, F, and B. All so that it can meet the compliance within and without the organization and drives clear data integrity back through the reporting. So we can see the exit criteria. We can see the exit criteria, and this is again configurable. So as your organization matures its states, it can be refined and states brought in or collapsed, whatever the case might be. But this then moves that portfolio epic into a point where in the reviewing state or in the analyzing state, we are starting to identify, yes, this thing has value. It aligns to a strategy. Now we want to see where it might live from a start and end point of view. And we're back to the roadmap to say, how can I do that? So on the backlog, you can set the portfolio epics by looking at a mixed view. There's a configuration on the roadmap that allows you to bring in both planned and unplanned. So I can see that which is already progressing, identify that which may need to carry over or through, that which is still progressing, and where appropriately this particular portfolio epic of effort can live. So when we have this now, we can see on the backlog that there's a new portfolio epic that's looking to be planned. So it's gone through its review, it's aligned to security, we know that it has a value. Now I can, using the drag functionality of the mouse in my month by quarter view, identify that this is the portfolio epic that I care about, and then drag it out to say, roughly it should start around the end of March, beginning of April, and roughly it should finish towards the end of December as a Christmas present to the market. When we set this, we can sync this back. Now we start to understand that the roadmap is also kind of a scenario planning space to say, what about now? No, that doesn't work. What about now? No, that doesn't work. How about here? Yeah, that's the place. And then we can save it. When we sync it, the system automatically knows, am I saving any health changes? Am I saving the target start and target completion dates? When it does that, it'll automatically populate that field inside the record. Now it becomes a planned piece of work. From the perspective of the roadmap, it is planned from a calendar point of view. This then says, hey, we've aligned it. We have a rough sense of when it's going to start and finish. Now we can start to look more clearly at what the portfolio ask can be, or specifically what teams or what trains are going to be doing the decomposition as it moves through its life cycle. We know it's aligned. We know when it's going to run. We know what program increments tie back to that period of time. So now we start to bring the right organizations to the right period of time to ensure that this is going to be completed as it has been set on the roadmap. So the strategic roadmap has been set and it's now living. The complete strategic roadmap is the strategic themes in the portfolio epics. So as the portfolios have contributed those portfolio epics and it's garnering its funding and approval, Jira Align makes that process very visible, measurable. There's a report I haven't even shown you that shows you how long it takes to move through these phases, where you can start to find the improvements and lean your process out. Minimum investment, maximum output. That's really the goal. So Jira Align does this with the following modules and reports: roadmaps, backlog, the list view, the Kanban process view, those exit criteria we looked at, the portfolio epic record, the details tab, all the rich information it can capture, the intake tab, the minimum amount of, hey, somebody looked at it, we should be paying attention to this, and the ideation module as an optional way of bringing that work in. So the value stream contributors, a new term I've just thrown out, is really those PMOs, programs, trains. They're now ready to refine the roadmap to the near-term program increment roadmap. So we're taking this concept of the funnel, where at strategy, we look over a long period of time, but we measure a little more infrequently, and the details are a little less fuzzy until we start getting rich results from when delivery is finally occurring. So as we narrow the funnel, we come into that near-term roadmap, which starts talking about those planning increments, the quarter boundaries. What are we doing from a feature or Jira Epic component set to deliver value now from a predictable cadenced perspective back against those strategies? So this is refining the program or trains roadmap. And we do this, that near-term program increment roadmap really is about setting that goal, not just for the next program increment, but for the next 3 program increments. Really, it's about 3 quarters or 9 months, long enough to have a baby, a software baby, a value baby. And the goal is to have predictability driving from the teams to know to a certain extent, 80% in the next program increment, 50% in the program increment after that, and 20% confidence in the program increment after that. that I'm going to carry these strategies through if the feedback loops keep feeding me the same results. So this then starts really building that near-term program increment roadmap. And in Jira Align, the near-term program increment roadmap looks the same as the strategic roadmap, but now the focus is very different. Now we're focusing on the PI horizon, and we're down to an actual train or a program that's doing the delivery. We're looking at the features, those Jira epics, by the portfolio epic. So now we're seeing how the features are aligning back to the portfolio epic, which is feeding the strategy. So we're staying connected to strategy without having to see everything. Then we're looking at this from a near-term perspective of what are the sprints within the program increment that we're going to deliver against. So now I can start to say a feature should start and finish here, helping sequence the backlog so that the teams aren't dealing with predecessor, successor, artificial relationships. But we start to see here also the sprints themselves are displayed. The portfolio epic is displayed. The feature Jira epic is displayed. And we start to see the story count aggregate in against the feature as the teams are doing decomposition. So as we're coming into our planning event horizon, where we're doing our pre-planning and the teams are starting to prepare and decompose, we now start to see where they think they're going to start and stop. And does that tie back to where we believed we've wanted the feature to start and stop? This is a continuation of that conversation of, I have an ask, but the people who can deliver understand the sequence that is best to deliver it. So the roadmap now, when we talk about scheduling these features on the near-term roadmap, they follow a simple intake to lifecycle process that's not as robust or as long-term as the portfolio level, but down inside of Jira Align, you can do for the program the same thing. What is my life cycle? What are the key values that I need to capture on each record? My governance and compliance to ensure that before I bring it to the teams, we are committed to being able to deliver this because it's very well qualified what we're trying to deliver. So once it's approved, it gets slated to the program increment. And again, it picks up a target start and stop, but this is about the sprints and not the dates. And the roadmap also brings back more information. It'll identify misaligned stories and it informs the program board for PI planning. Now the program board in Jira Align is another module that's visualizing the teams, the sprints, and the feature load and where it's going to be delivered, as well as dependencies and risks. I could do 40 minutes on that alone. So the roadmap is now starting to inform the teams in other ways outside of the module itself. When we look at this, we now see here are my target and start and stop sprints on my particular feature. I can see that there are 16 stories that are loaded in the AIP sprint. Perhaps as a coordinator, I may want to talk to that team about how we save that last sprint for something else. From a safe perspective, that's the innovation sprint, where you finish some work, you harden some stuff up, but really where you should be just having your fun. We see where misaligned stories are at, where the team has stories that may be scheduled somewhere else. And we can even open up the feature when we see the feature has been scheduled to a kind of when do we want it to start, when do we want it finished by. We get this little yellow warning indicator that says, hey, this feature, Jira Epic, is planned to be worked on from the AIP, which begins here and ends here on the program board. And this is a discrepancy based on the ask. So now we're seeing from the coordinator's perspective that the roadmap is even bringing information back so that we can have a conversation with the teams to say, we really need it to start and end here. What do we need to do to alleviate the concerns or dependencies or risks that you're facing in delivering this work when we've asked? So we're now starting to understand roadmaps rough to refined with Jira Align. We've walked through, after the near-term roadmap has been set up, how it becomes that living view, and we can start to process living view and process inside of Jira Align. We can see from the roadmap itself the health, the progress. We can start to talk about the impacts to unfinished work. We can be in the middle of a planning increment, in the middle of delivery against that committed plan, and say, ooh, we need to pivot off of here because this isn't going to finish in time. We now have a better sense of where we're meeting those strategies and where we're not, and what needs to be done to bring in that greater sense of predictable delivery against those strategies. So we see inside of the system, the roadmap module, the backlog module, we use the list view, the Kanban process view. There are process flows, which I didn't show you how to create, but that was the steps on the backlog view. And there's a process flow cycle time report, which I had referred to, which talks about how long things are staying in each one of the states, and other rich radiant information about work in process so that you can start to manage the right number to move through each state, as well as identify better ways of improving the work to minimize disruption as it moves through the states. Work objects inside of Jira Align, the strategic theme, the portfolio epics, and the feature Jira epics. We see there was the program board that was mentioned, which wasn't displayed, the ideation module not displayed for intake. So we see all the way from the highest concept of idea down to where we start to deliver from a predictable and committed perspective to the teams. Jira Align handles that, and there's so much more. The things that you should be able to take away, that the roadmap is intended to be used to assist organizations in gaining visibility into their strategic backlog, how portfolios are contributing their bodies of work to the strategic roadmap and inform the value of stream contributors to help refine it, and how the roadmap module in Jira Align helps organizations take their roadmaps from rough to refined. Out of, like, there's so many different ways organizations create their roadmaps. Every client that I've presented this to always immediately aggregate around the roadmap as the key value of bringing the program together and understanding its committed delivery moving forward. So if you want to keep the conversation going, here's my contact information. I'll be taking questions in just a second, but you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. C Prime, you can check out webinars, blogs. I've got a few blogs out there. There's a couple of webinars on how the product functionality works inside of Jira Align. There's one on government. There's a few in there. And if you're interested, you can share us what topics you're interested in learning more about. So thank you. What questions might you have for me?
Wow, that's really intensive. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's such a detailed one. Yeah, so folks, yeah, we are open for the questions. You can feel free to unmute and ask your question.
I have a couple of questions. Did you guys reconcile the Jira Software Epic and the Jira Align Epic?
When you say reconcile, there's always been a parity between the two. It's just a nomenclature difference. And there's actually an add-on inside of Jira that you can use called the E to F, or Epic to Feature Translator, that will turn that Epic object into whatever you want to call it. So inside of Jira Align, you can even change the feature title to, say, Epic. You can change it's all fluid. You can get parity between the two systems depending on how you're trying to get there. I think that was the question.
At the beginning, there was a lot of confusion with this Epic, because Epic in one is not same thing as Epic in the other. So that's why I'm asking if you guys had reconciled it.
Correct. There's the industry term Epic, right? This is considered to be the portfolio epic. It's something that lives like half a year to 2 years in length. It requires massive funding. And then there's the Jira Epic, which is considered to be kind of a feature size delivered within a program planning increment or a quarter. That's the intent behind of it. So when this was first introduced, there was that dissonance between the language. And this still exists as far as in Jira, it's still called an epic, and inside of Jira Align, by default, it's still called a feature. But quickly through implementation, the language can be changed to bring a normalcy to any client's instance.
Okay. Value stream, by the way, is a safe term. You didn't make that up.
Nope.
Value stream is a legitimate.
I was just saying value stream. Yeah, the value stream contributors was just a new term that I had thrown in the presentation. Okay. Did not make up value stream. Not at all. That's been around since forever. Just go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So second question is, you know how this Jira Align is really for a huge enterprise, and really trying to see where all the work is going and how it ties to the allocated money, for example, right? Mm-hmm. Is there any plan for Jira Align to have like a slightly smaller kind of a organization to be able to utilize this? Because in itself, the business model and the way it's set up, you know, it's useful, right? But it's so, the scale is so massive that only people or organizations that are just really huge can take advantage of this at this point because of the price pointing, right?
Yes, the price point is one prohibitive element of it.
Yeah. So is there any plans or can you talk to them?
They do have, Atlassian has two different packages for Jira Align. One's called Standard, the other's called Enterprise. And the Standard comes in at a slightly lower price point. Not quite sure exactly how much lower it is. As far as how Atlassian and my organization, C Prime for that matter, has been thinking about the client perspective, the smaller clients, not quite the enterprise size, but still want to get the same value set out of there. You can do it. It's about where you're at in your levels. If you're trying to just coordinate at the program level or the train delivery level, if you're trying to get to the portfolio, there are ways to do it. If your organization isn't as big, the cost point is just going to be prohibitive. That's the problem. And from an Atlassian perspective, I'm not sure where they're at with altering that or bringing out an even smaller offering based off of Jira Align at this point in time.
Hey, Jesse, I'm actually coming with a question kind of from the flip side. As a large enterprise, I get laughed out of the room by my enterprise when I ask them for 1.6 million to buy Jira Align. So, but I've also heard things that the way that the price point for the users is set up, that it's not a one-for-one match, or I know in the past I've been told that. So I'm trying to figure out like what's the right area, if especially when we go to this central unified environment where we have everybody in our company globally is on one instance on cloud at 10,000 users, it's cost prohibitive for us to buy any add-ons. And so I wonder with Jira Align, something like that, where it's so expensive and maybe only a small portion is using maybe one business unit of the larger enterprise. Did you have any advice on that?
So the way in which the licensing is intended to work is from a federated perspective of plugging into your Jira instance. And there's this concept of a 1-to-4 relationship. You get one full seat license in Jira Align, and that allows 4 out of Jira to kind of come in and play at the team level. Now, the data is integrated into your instance. The users are carried over automatically. If they log in, now you start counting licenses. And if they hit above a certain level, now you go flip into a full license. So this is meant to defray the expense of buying Jira Align as a full stack solution, because it's meant to be a cake topper, right? We want to put it on top. We want to bring in only those elements of the organization. So you say, okay, I've got 20 teams. Okay, great. 20 teams. Let's just say that's 200 people. I'm going to need to buy what, 25 licenses? No, that's wrong. 50 licenses. And now 50 Jira Align licenses gets me my 200 developers and the 50 coordinating people I need in there managing their data for the plan going out. So that kind of refines the concept. And thank you for asking that. And may tie into Samantha's ask as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I will definitely reach out to you afterwards to figure out, because that sounds like it can kind of like identify the number of users that want to use it versus just a straight on the top of your users. It's 1-to-4. So now I'm talking 2,500 users still. Where that's not the case. Cool. Thank you.
But we do want to just kind of lean in and say, what are you trying to do? What's the best first slice of the organization, right? We never want to go full big bang. It's always a little scary when you talk about that much transformation and tool set change management, right? So we say, let's pilot this thing. Let's get the right organization. Let's show that full rich value that you just purchased. And now we can open it up as the expansion occurs and we see the value coming out of it. So it's never considered to be all at once.
Another quick question. So you said there's standard and enterprise. So how big the organization have to be for enterprise versus standard?
The cutoff concept between the two packages is around whether you're pursuing product agility or portfolio kind of management. Both of those are considered the enterprise elevation of the software set. So when you talk about the size of an organization, we're talking about an organization that's probably got maybe 1 to 3, let's just use the safe term, trains, right, or delivery groups that are trying to coordinate around 1 or 2 value kind of deliveries, whether that's a product, a domain, or an asset. You're trying to coordinate your teams. So this would be about 500 is the minimum what we're really talking about that's viable. 500 developers and what it takes to coordinate their delivery within Jira Align. And that kind of gets you that sweet spot if you're not shooting for larger portfolio connectivity or financials, or if you're not looking for the product functionality and reportability out of the software.
Okay, I think that's more than 2 trains.
It's a bit more than 2 trains, and I apologize.
Actually many trains if it's 500. Okay,
500 employees.
Scale,
So to be clear, 500 employees is not necessarily 500 developers.
No, I get it. I get it.
So, and it's a Thursday after a very long week, so my brain is a bit lacking flexibility around context at moments. So forgive me if I misstep here or there in my language at this point in time. Other questions?
Yep. We can take, I think, one more question, maybe a last question. Anybody has?
Just scrolling through there. All right. I know that it was a lot of information. It's never not a lot of information when one is talking about Jira Align and its capabilities and functionalities as it impacts process, right? That's really the wake up point, is like, oh, wow, there's all these different visualizations that give me process visibility and process improvement opportunity. And that's the real value that you're looking for from Jira Align. It isn't just coordinating it against plan, it's the transformational data that it starts to drive, the learning from it. I want to thank you, everybody. If there aren't any more questions, I truly enjoyed being able to speak with you today and listening to Michael. That was the big gift for me. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks to you, Jesse, for presenting such well, and it's so deep and technical that it's so clear to everybody. So yeah, again, thank you very much. With that, we're gonna move to our next segment, which is the raffles. All right, so that's always exciting, and again, I would like to say thanks to all of our sponsors who always sponsors. Again, to remind, we have the grand prize bottle of bourbon from C Prime, $50 gift card from EdTech. High Metric has 2 gift cards for $25. So here is our wheel where we always draw the names as a reminder. We only have the community members here and not partners or leaders. And once we pick the name, please do us a favor by sending us the email. You can either put in chat for everyone, or if you prefer to do direct message, you can ping any of the co-lead and just provide your email address. So please acknowledge once your name get picked up, and we'll take it from there. So the first raffle I'm drawing, it's for $25 gift card from High Metric. All right, so I'm shuffling the names. And let's go. Ooh, Amanda. So do we have Amanda here?
I don't think she's on. Oh, we do
Yes,
see us.
yes,
Oh,
I am.
I apologize.
I joined a little late, but hello. Thank you.
Hey, hi. Congratulations, Amanda. So please just provide the email address either to everybody or.
Yeah,
or
if you don't feel comfortable putting it for everyone, this is the leap
Yeah.
year, you can just ping me, Amanda. I'll just IM you as
Great.
well. Right?
Oh, yep. I'll chat you.
All right. So this is the next $25 gift card again from High Metric. Helio. Okay. Do we have Philly here? I would wait for the confirmation. Believe you're tracking, right? If there's
Yeah, I'm tracking. Yeah, I don't think Philo is here. So let's just draw again.
Okay. All right. So I'm putting it again. Again for the $25 gift card from Hymetric. John. I think he was there. John, you there?
Yeah, John's here. So we'll
Perfect. All right. So I'll move to the next raffle, which is the $50 gift card from EdTech. All right. There we go. Jean. Do you have Jean here?
Jean is here.
Awesome.
Jean, Jean, do you hear us?
Please confirm.
Jean's probably got us on mute in the background here. All right, we'll give him a second here.
Yep, that's fine. We can give a second.
He's saying thank you in the chat.
Oh, you did? Okay, perfect. All right,
okay,
great.
That's perfect.
All right.
All right, that's cool. So now it's the time for the last raffle, bottle of bourbon from C Prime. Okay, good luck, everybody.
And this is really thanks to Alex and Jesse here from C Prime for bringing this.
Kelly. Do we have Kelly here? We'll wait. We'll give a few seconds. So the winners, I mean, once you provide your email address, any of the leaders will reach out to you and connect you on how to get your raffle prize.
I think Kelly dropped. I don't think she's on anymore.
Ooh,
I don't see her there.
That's sad, but okay. So would like to then we'll move on.
Dave was quick to post that too. They needed to find another bourbon winner.
All right. We want to pull the next one in. Okay. All right. There you go. Really wrong. Do we have anyone here?
I don't see William either.
All the way at the bottom, I do see.
Oh, he is there? I see him. Okay. Oh gosh, sorry.
Is he responding?
William, can you come off mute or drop a note in the chat?
All right, going once, going twice.
Don't give up the bourbon.
All right, no winner here.
No winner. Okay, we are back. So this bottle of bourbon is
the best part.
Who's hacking and preventing people from coming off mute? Come on.
yeah, that's a good point. Somebody's doing it. Okay, all right. Let's see who gets the bourbon. Brittany, do we have here?
Isn't she at last?
Yeah, she dropped too.
Yeah, she dropped too.
Okay, that's fine.
Keep going.
Wow. All right, that's exciting. This happened first time.
Very exciting.
This never happened again. That's perfect. I mean, that's okay, Dennis.
I see a Denise in the chat. Or
Yay,
in the
I'm here.
Finally.
I'm so excited.
Wow. Congratulations.
All right, I have to ping some of my I can't lose this bourbon.
That's perfect. So it was waiting for you. You see how many people it bypassed before coming to you.
Denise, I'm going to IM you directly, and you can just send it to me here. Okay.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Well, that's all awesome. With that, I'm again gonna say thanks to all of sponsors, C Prime, EdTech, and Hymetric for sponsoring all these raffles. That's always good for all the community members. And thanks to all the community members for participating today and being with us. with that, I think we're gonna wrap up tonight's event. Unless anybody has any questions, I would wait for a few seconds. If anybody has any questions, otherwise we'll just wrap it up and call it for the day.
Yes, just a quick note. Yeah, if there's any other questions in general, not obviously with tonight's presentations, but Jira, Org, or the registration for Team 21, please be free to let us know. It's over here.
And there is a community page for New York City ACE, so you can always join that and reach out to us via community pages as well whenever you have any questions. Okay, all right, I take it as no. So thank you once again, everybody. Thank you for participating, and have a great night and have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.